Hello, Cleaner.
Hi, Ingram.
Thank you for joining me on this Bank Holiday Monday.
Pleasure.
We've arranged to have a bit of a conversation about some of the work we're doing in the Division of Neuropsychology. I'm grateful to you for giving up your time, but I'm really keen to be here to sort of share with people some ideas about what we're doing. Do you want to start by introducing yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Cleaner Carroll. I'm a clinical neuropsychologist based in Kent and London. And I am the early career rep on the DON, the Division of Neuropsychology Executive Committee, which is a bit of a tongue twister, but basically my role is about trying to kind of encourage people into the profession of neuropsychology and kind of bringing any issues that people have to the DON, and likewise kind of trying to kind of get that communication both ways as well.
Great, thank you, Cleaner. I'm Ingram Wright, so I'm here because I've been newly appointed as chair of the Division of Neuropsychology. I've been involved with the work of the division for a number of years, and really proud to be leading the organisation, or member network as we call it. So it's a network of members, of those who are interested in clinical neuropsychology, neuropsychological practice, academic neuropsychology. And I suppose our role is to support members with the things that they need. So whether it's CPD events, whether it's encouragement into training, which is what we're particularly focused on today, it's about recognising how individuals who've got interests and aspirations to get into neuropsychology, how do we support them in understanding what the career pathways look like, and how they might get relevant experience in order to progress in terms of training. So that's what we're here to support. But I suppose in order to support that, we need to understand what people need, don't we? So one of the things that we're really keen to get across today is how open we are to having that kind of conversation with people who have aspirations. And we're running a series of network events which are about engagement. I promised to allow you to ask me lots of questions, and I've just launched into what we're.
You go for it. I think it's really important though, Ingram, isn't it? That kind of sense of, you know, we know what the Division of Neuropsychology is. We're involved in it, but I guess kind of part of kind of the drive forward and part of kind of the plans that you were talking about is about kind of opening that up, isn't it, to people who don't necessarily know the kind of career pathways, who don't know kind of like the structures of the DON and how it works and the type of work that we get involved with.
So even phrases like the acronyms like the DON, that's the Division of Neuropsychology, not everybody understands that. And so one of the things I suppose we're trying to do is to open things up and to use language that's accessible to everybody, and to recognize that if you have an interest in training in neuropsychology, you might be put off by some of the ways that we market our events currently. And we'd like to hear more about how we can reach out a little bit further and a little bit earlier in the journey to people who have an interest and have aspirations, because I think one of the things that we really need to shift is from our very well established sort of focus on clinical neuropsychologists who are established and practicing and have particular needs, to a much broader constituency that represent the future of clinical neuropsychology. And I think that's one of the things that I intend to carry forward. It's a direction of travel that's been reasonably well established through the efforts of Catherine Carpenter, who is now the president of the BPS. So we're continuing in that vein, if you like. But I'm really keen that we do continue that work, and that we're much more open to interests and influences from those who aren't currently members of the Division of Neuropsychology, but maybe have aspirations to become members or to change the division and the way that it operates.
And I guess that's kind of part of it, isn't it? Like Catherine was the chair of the DON, the division, for 6 years. So it sounds like kind of, I guess, part of your kind of changing of the guard almost, in a way, of becoming chair, is about kind of like looking at kind of what might be ways that we can change things, like kind of and draw on that work that Catherine has done about kind of opening up the profession more broadly.
Yes, and I think some of that is about people who are studying psychology and they maybe have interest in clinical, health, forensic, educational, but also we want them to think about neuropsychology alongside those interests, or within those interests, or as those interests develop. I think there are also, as we know, groups of practitioners who are working in contexts, working alongside neuropsychologists, and I suppose we want to enfranchise clinical psychologists who are working in neuro settings, counselling psychologists, colleagues in health psychology, educational psychology, who might not feel the division of neuropsychology has been speaking to them or for them. And I think we very much have aspirations to do so, but in order to do so effectively, we need to begin a dialogue with those people about what they want and need. It's not an easy thing for an organization to do. And so I suppose I do hope people come along to these webinars. I do hope people talk to us, but this isn't going to be the last opportunity to do that. There'll be other ways in which people can let us know what they want, what they need, or how we might be failing them in some way. So I'm very happy to have an honest dialogue about some of the things that we got wrong in the past and how we might get that right in future.
And I guess there's something, Ingram, isn't there, about, you know, neuropsychology and brains, like kind of we're everywhere. You know, we all have a brain. We all have like kind of some kind of neuropsychological kind of functioning. It's part of being human. And I guess it's kind of, you know, in that broad spectrum of kind of, you know, you've mentioned kind of forensic counselling psychology, educational psychology, clinical psychology, like kind of neuropsychology, kind of it crosses all of those aspects, and it's there, isn't it? And I guess it's kind of part of how can the division of neuropsychology support with ingraining and embedding neuropsychology in a way that's helpful across multiple kind of multiple kind of areas of psychology as well. And I guess, you know, potentially kind of in the future, kind of even go beyond that as well, isn't it? And how do we link with other kind of disciplines and other professions? And
I think, so as you were referring to that issue, I suppose I was thinking about how, you know, we've tended to think about the need to protect and preserve the integrity of neuropsychological practice, neuropsychological formulation. And one of the things that we've not necessarily thought about is how can we encourage those people who are not necessarily comfortable or confident as things stand with neuropsychological ways of thinking about problems that they might experience in their work. How can we encourage those people to embrace some of that, some of those ideas that are being developed within neuroscience more generally, but also neuropsychology specifically? And I think the more open we are in having that dialogue, the more encouraging we can be, we will enfranchise a much greater group of people who have an interest, as you say, in brains and how they work in mental health, how they work in education, as well as how they work in hospitals that some of us work. Right, so it's important there's much greater fluidity and engagement with a wider group who have an interest in neuropsychological thinking, and I don't think there is necessarily a contradiction in also focusing on preserving the integrity of what it is to be a neuropsychologist and what it is to develop a neuropsychological formulation. I think we can preserve that while at the same time being open to having a much richer and broader dialogue.
And it's like, to kind of use a systemic term, it's both and.
Yeah.
It's both, you know, it's both those things and all those things together, isn't it? Like kind of the one is, you know, one's not exclusive to the other. And I think that kind of maybe some of the feeling that might be around a little bit, like kind of historically as well. And, you know, it really feels like kind of from your point of view as the chair of the division, it's about kind of easing those kind of potentially kind of conflicting views into kind of more of a kind of sitting alongside each other, isn't it, in a way?
So some of the things that we plan to do, Cliona, as you know, to run some surveys around what people think so that we can understand what people might need from us and what people would value in terms of developments within the profession and developments within our member network, the Division of Neuropsychology. We plan to run a series of webinars, and I'm hoping that alongside this video, we can make sure the dates and the links to access those are well publicised. But also if people want to get in touch with me, so either whether they want to do so by direct messaging me on Twitter or beginning a conversation on social media or emailing me directly, we'll make sure that those contact details are available so we can get a sense of what people think and what they need.
Do you want to say a little bit, Ingram, about, you mentioned kind of a series of events. Do you want to kind of speak a little bit to the first event that's planned? So
the first event on the 19th, let me just get the time right, I've written it down here in front of me, on the 19th of May, and I think it's at 5 p.m, yeah. So the first event is for those who've got aspirations to train or to take an interest in neuropsychology going forward in their careers. So it may well be that we, well, we certainly do want to speak to those who are undergraduates pursuing psychology, but who are interested in neuropsychology, interested in clinical applications of psychological work they're doing, or perhaps working as assistant psychologists, working as volunteers or healthcare assistants in the NHS, and see neuropsychology as a potential way forward. So that event is specifically for that group.
And in terms of that, Ingram, is there kind of a plan that it will be a bit of kind of open dialogue? Is it a bit about kind of talking through the potential pathways? How do you think that will look?
Yeah, so obviously, I think it's helpful for us to share some of the ideas that we've developed already. So, what are the current training routes? How do people get into neuropsychology? If you're interested in neuropsychology, what's the best pathway for you? So to have a bit of time to sort of focus on that and orient ourselves to where things are at present, but then also think to the future and how might things be different? How might we develop ways to support people to take an interest and pursue those interests differently? And I think that's where listening to the people who attend is really important, because we can make a difference. We can change some of those structures, we can adapt them. We don't necessarily have to chip away at the integrity, as I said, of what clinical neuropsychology is and what's important about our discipline. But what we can do is make sure that we don't put artificial barriers in the way of people progressing, so that people know what they have to do. They have access to the kind of training opportunities that they need to be able to further their interests. So that's what it's about. It's about a two-way conversation to make sure that, both sides of those kinds of things, the understanding of how things are at present, but also sharing some ideas about how things could be different in future.
And it sounds from what you're saying as well, Ingram, that it's not just about these ones-off events. It's very much about, come along to kind of some of these events, but also please don't be afraid to get in touch with us, like kind of, to have those open dialogues. And, I know there's many of us kind of in the division, like kind of that very, very open, like kind of to having conversations with people, no matter what stage of their careers that they're at, to kind of come drop us an email, get in touch. Like, we're happy to have a conversation or set up a Zoom call. And
Cliona, I just really wanted to thank you for giving up your time to have this conversation. I suppose this is an example of something that we're trying to do to encourage a sort of, significant openness about what it is that we're doing, how our plans are evolving, and where they're at, and how they're very much about having a conversation. You have an interest, as you say, in, certainly born out of experiences you've had of training relatively recently in neuropsychology. We'll have experience of some of the difficulties that people can experience along the way, and then we're very keen to understand that and work to try and smooth the pathway as much as possible.
And I guess I'm also really aware as well through my work, like kind of, I supervise some rehab assistants, I supervise some assistant psychology or assistant psychologists, and I'm really conscious that if people have got that experience and that they're in those networks, and those types of networks do exist, but I'm also really aware that there's, hundreds of people who are not linked in, who don't have that access. And I guess it's kind of trying to encourage that equity of access, kind of, and ensuring that people do feel like, do you know what, I can pick up the phone, I can drop an email, and, people won't think badly of me for doing that. It's very much about, please do get in touch. We're all really, really passionate about neuropsychology and growing the profession. And that can't happen by just us being interested. Like, kind of, it's about the next generations and the generations to come.
Absolutely. Thank you, Cliona.
Thank you, Ingram.